I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 68. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's podcast. I am pumped to deliver to you today a conversation that I had with a brilliant man named John Strohmeyer. I'll give you a better intro to him in just a moment, but here's what I want to say about this conversation. You should listen to this if you're interested in delivering great customer service, but this is not your traditional customer service conversation, and that is a very good thing. I think what John is sharing today on the show just feels like truth. You know, when you hear things and sometimes you'll hear advice and it feels like a good idea, but almost feels like a shiny object that you want to get implemented, or like, that I'm going to make a note of that. I want to do that later. That is what a lot of customer service conversations are like, in my opinion. And they all sound great. He actually references a few examples that are very common out in the world that are given. The Joshy story from the Ritz-Carlton, and there's a 12-hour customer service call from Zappos. And there's like these examples out there that are very shiny and very extreme of what can be done to provide good customer service. And John cuts through all of it. And I love that. It's very refreshing to hear that you don't have to be that. You don't have to go out on a limb in the ways that are presented often. You just need to dial it in for yourself. And when I say dial it in, you need to dial in basically your main product, period. And he's going to go deep into this, and it's so fascinating. I highly encourage you to check out more about him. If you like this conversation, if you like what he had to say, I definitely think that you should go to check out his new podcast, which is called 5-Star Counsel, and learn more, because he's got a lot to teach. And I, for one, will be tuning in. That is for sure. So hopefully you guys do too. Now, let's talk about John just a little bit. I met him almost 6 months ago. He's been a client of Velocity Works, and he's such a brilliant mind. I really enjoy working with him because of how sharp his brain is, and his sense of humor is incredible. His background is, and he'll say a little bit about this in the beginning of the podcast, but he was a manager at the Four Seasons Hotel for a few years. And then when he decided to go to law school, he did so at the University of Texas for his JD. And then he went on to get his master's of law at NYU. So, I mean, that just kind of tells you what kind of a person he is, and what an honor and a privilege it's been to work with him. He's brilliant, and he has an awesome sense of humor, and I'm really proud to have him on the podcast. I think this is information that is my responsibility to pass on to y'all. This is not my area of expertise, but I know all of my clients, and if you're listening to this, you should be dialed in to the things that he's talking about today, without question. It's essential. Okay, now before I turn it over to the conversation, there's something going on with my audio during this podcast recording, and so it's not as clear or as up close and personal. My voice isn't as I prefer, so I apologize for the technical mishaps. It's still a great interview. We are going to do everything we can to make sure it's as smooth as possible, but I just wanted to give a heads up. You all will be able to tell a difference in my voice, and I don't know what was going on. So, all right. Enjoy the conversation. John Strohmeyer, I am very excited to have you on the podcast. We are going to be talking about something today that I think is, of course, I think it's super important. I'm not an expert on it. And the expert advice that's given, I think, is kind of generic, and you have a really interesting take. So I'm excited to have you here. Welcome, first of all.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
would you give the listeners a little bit of background about where you are, what kind of law you practice, and why you care about the topic we're talking about today, which is customer service?
Sure. So we start out with, I own my own firm, Strohmeyer Law, in Houston, Texas, where I do estate planning, probate, and tax work. But what I did before law school was that I worked for the Four Seasons hotels for 4 years. Most of that time was spent in management. Specifically, I was the night manager of the Austin property. So I learned how to run businesses, specifically a hotel, but learn how to run a business and implement and deliver service on a consistent basis. And unlike being a lawyer, we didn't have any special licenses. It was just the hotel as a hotel being able to deliver service on a high level, compete with other hotels in the market, and ultimately charge more for the service we were delivering. Mm-hmm. And when I moved over to work, left the hotel, went to law school, then got a job, I was confused. Initially it was like, oh, well, lawyers do things differently. And I thought I was going to have to leave all of the service behind. But what I found is service in a legal model is only slightly different, but there's really kind of one grand unified theory of service that does apply to all of this. And because it does, we can then take some of those lessons, or I can take the lessons I learned at the hotel and use those as a way to help lawyers improve the client service that they're delivering without, and the problem I've seen is, well, lots of people are out there saying, well, service is this, do that, but it's a really kind of top level, not very deep thought about it. There's no coherent ideology to it, which is fine, except when you don't have any context for how to implement it. The problem is people resort to kind of empty phrases like, exceed expectations or above and beyond. And then you hear stories like the Joshi story from the Ritz-Carlton or the 12-hour sales support call from Zappos, and you think, oh, well, I'm a law firm, but what I should do is follow these multi-billion-dollar companies and do what they did, because if they're doing it and people are impressed by it, then that's going to work for me too. And that's the problem. Is what I'm trying to do is get people, and specifically lawyers, to stop focusing on things that don't work for them, because they've got to get the service basics right before they can go to those high level, super fine touch things. And if you stop getting distracted by things like having a drink menu or, all sorts of little fine touches that clients ultimately don't really care about, you're going to be much more successful and kind of be able to deliver a better product for your clients.
I love what you're talking about because, tell me if this feels like a stretch, but this is what's happening in my head. It bothers me when people take ideas as a blueprint and they don't know how to think for themselves in terms of implementing. And what I like about what you're saying is, to your point, the Joshi story, which I don't know if people know that or not. You could look it up if you don't know it. But the Joshi story, or the long Zappos call, the 12-hour Zappos call, things like that. It's like they see one thing, and so then they try to implement a version of it without really thinking through or really having an understanding or working to understand or think about themselves uniquely. And I like what you have to say because, well, number one, you have a deep understanding of customer service and what it looks like. And you and I have talked about, like, there's kind of a structure in your mind and how to think about these things. And that's why I think this call will be really helpful, is that based on the information that you provide, it will allow people to implement in a way that makes sense, not just taking these beautiful stories and trying to recreate that in their business. You'll help them be much smarter about how to think about customer service for themselves. So,
right. And so I do have this structure for how I think about it, and it's probably useful to just quickly run through that, because there are a lot of things that fall out of that, kind of my grand unified theory of customer service. And so we start with a very basic idea that every business, whether it's a law firm or consulting firm or Lego or Disney or whoever, they're all selling product, whatever type of product it is. Doesn't mean that they only have one type of product. They can have multiple types of product. But every product is made up of three different components. There is a physical component where, the part of whatever you're paying for that you can pick up and touch. Then there is a technical component where that is not something you can necessarily pick up and touch, but it's going to be knowledge and experience and skills. And so if you want to think about, like in law school, we learned how the law worked, and that's one level of knowledge. Then we started practicing and we learned how to apply, not only how to apply the law thinking through with this law, this result comes out of these facts, but I need to draft a motion for summary judgment, and that document should look like this, and it should have these words in kind of this order and should be structured this way. That's sort of how you do a thing. And then finally, the third level is expertise, where you know the law, you know how to execute on the law, but more importantly, you can start seeing how to guide clients through that. Like, that's the part that people come to lawyers for. They're not necessarily coming to us for the legal knowledge, because they can just Google that. Whether or not it's correct is a different matter, but they can get access to that basic knowledge. You can find, the practice of law is getting in some ways commodified. People can just go on, you can go on things like Craigslist and Upwork and find a lawyer to do a thing for you. But what clients are looking for and what we are getting paid for is less the doing and more the thinking, like being the expert. And so that is the high level for lawyers. So backing way up, physical components, technical components, and finally, there's a service component, which is how the business is going to deliver those first two components. So customer of generic business goes in, whatever they're doing, they're paying for a mix of all three of those components: physical, technical, service. And every business is going to have a different mix. So if you go to Lego and you want their Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon model, you're paying for, you're paying $800 for 55 pounds of Lego bricks. There is some technical component in their product mix and how they bring things to market and their supply chain and all other stuff that you don't care about. Like you want all the bricks. There's some service in how they get it to you and how they package it up and how the people behave. But primarily, they're a physical component business. You're not going there for the technical stuff. You're going there for the physical, like, give me the bricks in a box. Lawyers are expert status, technical businesses. People don't come to us for offices or a drink menu or necessarily our service. They're coming to us for the expert status and the fact that we've done this before and we can help guide you through things. As a coach, Melissa, that's where you are as well. Like, people don't come to your office. Well, nobody goes to anybody's office anymore. But coming to you for expert guidance and accountability. Mm-hmm. That is what you ultimately sell as a business coach. Mm-hmm. And the service is important. Like, the service component is important, but if you were just bringing drinks around to everybody's offices, people aren't going to come to you for your drink serving ability or, the fun gifts that you occasionally send to my office. Mm-hmm. You're like, we work together because I get accountability from working with you, and that's your role. Mm-hmm. And so the last one is what people typically confuse. Service economy, they confuse us with knowledge workers. So knowledge workers aren't all service economy in my little model. There's technical service, and then there's the service component. Really, when you're dominated by that, those are places where you're going and you're enjoying the time you spend with that business. You're going specifically there. Entertainment's a great way of thinking about it. Of, like, you go to the movies to be entertained, not to revel necessarily in the theaters, or for the fact that they know how to color correct or use After Effects or whatever programs they use to make the movies. Like, you're going there to be entertained. Mm-hmm. Like, you are enjoying your time there. And so those three businesses, or those three components, like, every business has one primary component and the other two just support the value. And when you're supporting that value, that means those other two take a back seat. So as technical business folks, people are coming to us first and foremost because we're experts in what we do. And as lawyers, we're there to solve problems. People aren't coming to us for fancy offices or drink menus or how we treat them. I mean, it helps if we treat them nicely, but it doesn't matter. Like, nobody's going to say, I'm going to go to lawyer Joe Smith again because they had, I was getting divorced and they had a great drink menu. So I need another drink menu. So I'm all in on Joe's drink menu. I'll just go around on a divorce again. Like, that's insane. If you saw a Google review for any lawyer that said, hire this lawyer because they've got great offices, it should strike you as wrong because that's not what you pay a lawyer for. But you have fancy offices when you're able to use it to support the price that you're charging the market. If you have a higher price, you can more easily support that higher price with fancier offices. If you're the low price leader, your offices shouldn't be the fanciest around. It is not in alignment. And so these pieces have to be in alignment. And if you start going out of alignment, if you just say, look, I'm going to crank really hard on service, when you're replacement level attorney, things get out of whack and it doesn't work for you. It's the Joshi story where a family had left their 2-year-old's puppet or stuffed animal or whatever at a Ritz-Carlton. And so the Ritz-Carlton took a bunch of photos of the stuffed animal all around the hotel before they sent it back. And it's a great story, but having worked in a hotel, like having worked in the Four Seasons, that never happens, or it happens so rarely that that's why it's just the Joshi story and not the every other week at the Ritz-Carlton this happens story. It's a great marketing piece, but don't treat it as every day everybody in the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons, are looking for ways to just knock it out of the park like that. Yeah. It's great. It's a wonderful thing to do, but it's just not realistic. And having worked in a hotel that worked in the Four Seasons, you couldn't invest that amount of time in anything because you still have to run a hotel for the other, in the case of the Four Seasons in Austin where I work, the other 290 rooms in that hotel, you have to take care of them as well. If you're running around taking pictures of every lost stuffed animal, you'll never get anything done.
Right. Okay. Oh my gosh. I have a question. So
Only one?
No. Question plural. Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. First question is, so I'm just going to recap because I want to make sure I'm understanding everybody else's understanding.
Oh yeah. I threw out a lot of things.
No, but which is all really good. So there's, your company is either like your product is either mostly the dominant, I guess, of the three is either going to be physical, technical, or service. And technical, you kind of broke down. That's knowledge, applying the knowledge, doing of the knowledge, and then expertise.
Yes.
So law firms are technical. That's their primary, what is this item? Primary product?
Primary product. And it may help to kind of think about it use the restaurant metaphor because everybody understands eating.
Yeah.
Restaurants, even though they are primarily it'll either be a physical or a service business, but the technical aspect in a restaurant, the base level is a recipe. Just knowing what that recipe is. You can go online and Google whatever recipe you want, and there you have it. That level 2 of skills knowledge is knowing how to actually take the ingredients and put it together and prepare it. Just, not reading it's not reading the recipe again. It's knowing how to do something with it. And then that third level is when the restaurateur, the owner, the chef, whoever it is, puts together the menu saying, look, of all of the recipes and all of the ways of preparing the recipe, with various cooking techniques. This is the organization. Like I'm the expert because I can pick out these recipes prepared this way and then make money doing it. So lawyers, starting with how the law works, then knowing how to put the documents or whatever in order. And then once you've got all of those skills, being able to be the expert who says, we need to go down this path, not that path.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really helpful. Okay. Here's my question though, because you were mentioning, which I totally agree with, but I just want to push at something just to see what you have to say. You mentioned nobody who's been through a divorce chose their law firm because of the drink they brought around or whatever. Like you said along those lines. I think you're right about that. However, I think I know what your answer is to this, but I just want to hear it. However, I believe in the value of delighting your clients or your customers. So you're not saying don't do those things, I think, but you're saying most people focus on that stuff way too early.
Yes.
They put the cart before the horse, and their primary product is not dialed in.
Right.
And so when they jump to the delightful pieces, it is but their product still sucks. It's not dialed in. So that's the problem. Is this fair?
Yeah, that's it exactly. It's not to say don't ever do that. It's you have to have things lined out way before you can start pulling the lever on custom drink menu and have it not be a waste of effort.
Yeah.
Think about marketing. You don't want somebody who doesn't know how their process is structured, how they intake clients. You don't want them dumping a bunch of money on pay-per-click ads because the money is just going to get wasted. They're going to get all these leads. They're not going to handle them correctly. And ultimately, it's going to be frustrating for both the business and the potential client.
Yeah.
So you really you're limited by whatever the top level of your product is. We're not going to get around the fact that as lawyers, we're going to be technical service providers no matter what. It doesn't matter how fancy our offices are or how much we could delight clients. Mm-hmm. People aren't coming to you for that drink menu. So we've got to focus on, first get the basic level of service down. So not 85 sources of artisanal water, but just we have water. That's good enough. Then focus on being better at differentiating yourself in the market. So that, at first it means don't be the door lawyer who takes anything that walks through the door. It's I focus on these clients so I can help them do these particular things.
Okay, so is there anything in your head that you can tell us or spit out? When you think about law firms, and maybe you can use your own as an example of getting that base level, that primary product really dialed in. What are some of the things that people listening, give examples of things they should be thinking about within their primary product before they start jumping to delights?
Right. It's knowing the basics of what happens when somebody calls you. At the hotel, we called it sequence of service. Mm-hmm. When somebody checks in, they're going to go through this particular series of experiences. Mm-hmm. And I worked at the front desk. So there were 20 or 21 things that had to happen every time somebody checked in. Now, these weren't always explicit. All right, I'm going to do item 21 now, sir. They would get rolled together, but you had to make sure that they had a particular experience with you so that you were setting them up to enjoy the hotel. And so it was things like making sure you told them where the gym was, where they could get food right now mm-hmm. in the hotel, and specifically telling them 3 places where they could get something to eat if they needed it. Mm. And it's that level of detail of this is the basic stuff. And it's basic because the employees had to know where things in the hotel were so that they could explain it to the guests. And in a law firm, it's, clients aren't just coming in to have, the law provided to them. you need to be able to explain, all right, well, here, this is what this means. We're going to do discovery first, and that's what it looks like, this, and this. And I can hear people saying, well, I already do that, and I tell people that. But have you actually mapped out so that clients know what's going to happen and kind of where the decision points are? Because having it clear in your mind is one thing, but making sure the people on your staff know so that they can explain it. And also knowing that they can explain it to your clients so that if somebody gets lost, they know where they're going.
Do you think... Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, to wrap it up, it's really knowing the process well enough that you don't sound surprised by what happens. Like there's one thing to, oh, well, we didn't expect this to happen, but this has happened, and so this is our response. That's one thing versus, oh, I've never seen that before. And when you're the expert, when you're the expert that you should be as the lawyer, you should know what's coming down the line and where, if you get derailed for some reason, whether it's, I had this happen with a client this week in a probate, we can't find the original will. We're not out of options, but it does mean that we've got to change our path for this client so that we can get the probate completed. And knowing, when the client called me and said, I don't know what to do, we can't find this, I wasn't like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do. I could say, look, we will need a few affidavits. We need to get a few people notified. And we'll have the list of things for you to do. Yeah. Being able to provide that level of expert service instead of saying, I have no idea what we're going to do now. It's, and that comes from working in the same practice area and getting good at what you do and not just bouncing around.
Right. I mean, it sounds like there's something at the consulting firm I used to work at that we were trained to think about and to train our clients was this idea of when it comes to efficiency and streamlining, this idea, if you can imagine like a specific thing that you deal with on a conveyor belt, the client experience, let's use that. The client experience of them on a conveyor belt, moving through the first phone call all the way through completion of the work. Where is the conveyor belt starty?
Right.
Like, where is it not smooth? And so you're saying, I think, is before you move on to delights, it has to be so smooth for the client because that's your primary product and that's what matters. And people want to jump to the delightful stuff, even when it's like almost smooth. It's pretty smooth.
Right. No, I think that's a great analogy where what you're thinking about is if it's a conveyor belt and they're going through, with you through a process, you need to know what that conveyor belt looks like, and you need to have built it out before you can replace the conveyor, like the actual belt, with just the black, generic, unpretty belt with something that looks shinier and nicer.
Yeah.
You have to have that in place because the idea, thinking on the fly with this metaphor, but the conveyor belt has to work first. And so that's the basic level of service. You can't start, put lipstick on that pig. So you get it working. The way that it works faster or better, as your business is when you become the expert, you can charge more. And so that's how you make the conveyor belt ultimately more productive. You turn it over faster, whether it's turning over faster or charging more, whatever it is that you can do. And then once you've got that, that's when then it makes sense to support the value of your expert status with the finer touches. And even then, like not getting too derailed, because if you're saying, oh, well, I want to have a drink menu, clients are going to be fine if you don't have a real big drink menu. If you just have the standard Coke or Pepsi products, you'll be fine. The Four Seasons, years ago, I was at a conference and one divorce attorney had told me, oh, well, if a client asks for a drink, we just run out to the store and get it if we don't have it. Like that. One, I don't believe you when you say that. But at the hotel, we never would have done that. We would have made do with whatever we had there. But if we only bought Coke products And if they had asked for Pepsi, they were out of luck. And just there wasn't going to be, there would be I'm sorry, we don't have that, but we do have these options for you. Would those work? And that would be really the end of it, because we don't have time to go do Joshy level run around this, always sending somebody to the grocery store to pick up Diet Lemon Fresca or whatever.
So interesting to hear you talk about this. When I work with clients, it seems like the jerky parts of the conveyor belt are always, there's always some in intake. Or either your puppy, maybe they're put on hold too long, or maybe the right questions aren't asked. And so it's this weird, clunky experience at the beginning. And maybe you don't get the client because you didn't handle it well enough to keep them going. The other stop-starty stuff that I hear a lot about is through the client work and experience, expectations aren't set very well for the client. And so they feel in the dark, and they're calling you, and the firms get frustrated, like how much clients call. I'm like, that's on you, man. Like, cause that, in my opinion, like that's part of getting your product dialed in to your point, like so smooth that they don't have to call you and be like, what's up with my case? What's up with my case? It's just there should be updates. Some people are really good about this, by the way, but there's a lot that just haven't taken the time.
Exactly. And it's, the knowing what it looks like, because ultimately I do tax and estate planning and probate. It looks different than a criminal defense firm, looks different than a family law firm. So many other different practices that the things that I have set in place, some of it translates, but the ability of somebody, I know PI and criminal defense firms, like they have to have somebody on the phones 24 hours. I know that my clients really aren't calling after about 6:30. Mm-hmm. And it's just, having done this for over a decade, unless there is something really wrong, mm-hmm. nobody's calling me after 7:00. And even then, those calls are maybe once a year. Mm-hmm. And so you're right. Like you have to dial in how things work and how those processes are set so that it's not stop-starty, because that's an interruption for you, and it's an interruption and frustrating for the client. Mm-hmm. And so exactly. It's you're designing the service to figure out what your business is going to do in those situations so that the client's experience mm-hmm. is much better. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, it's not saying experience doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But you've got to know where to focus, because what I don't want you doing is saying, oh, well, we deliver great service because I have the most expensive office in town. Like that's wonderful. Unless you are the highest end practitioner, it doesn't make sense for you. Mm-hmm. It's things like, oh, well, we get clients. We have some of the best social media stuff. No, that's marketing. That's not your service. That's not your product. Mm-hmm. We send clients gift cards when they're thinking about us, because then the social contract kicks in and then they're more likely to sign up with us. Mm-hmm. That's not service. That's you basically discounting your product or your price and luring them in with something. And it's not wrong, but don't consider it service.
Right. Yeah. Gosh, this is fascinating. Okay. I have a question that I am, because so you've worked with me.
Yes.
For several months now. And I know I'm not where I want to be in terms of the primary product. And what you say resonates with me, because it feels very fun to delight clients. And, like we send you a gift for X, Y, and Z, right? Like different points in your journey. And that feels important, but what also is so important that I'm still working on is making that conveyor belt so smooth. So
right.
I'm just curious. This is really going to put myself out there for a minute, but I'm curious, like how I know the conveyor belt is not as smooth as it could be, and we're working on that.
Right.
But
everybody is.
Everybody is. But I'm curious from your perspective, if you were going to rate me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like Are you nervous? I'm looking at his face. Come, Melissa. Like 10 being Four Seasons level.
Okay.
And 0 being like totally neglectful.
Okay.
What would you give me on a scale of 1 to 10 using
Okay, so you're putting me on
the spot.
Which is going to be difficult because now I've got to come up with an arbitrary number. But, again, I'm going to start with, this is how you deliver your product. It's not the quality of the coaching and accountability you're giving me. So I want to be clear, because the reason we're still here, the reason we're still working together, is I do get a lot of value out of that. So this is not an indictment of your technical product, because you're really good at that. Now, I will give you a very specific example of where it's been good, and I'll give you a specific example where it's been bad. Okay. So, and you already know what the bad example is. Well, I guess we'll start with that one, because that way we can get it out of it. When I was getting onboarded, you sent me a questionnaire.
Yes. Oh, I do this. Oh my God. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, questionnaire. The problem with it was, and what was frustrating for me, was that you didn't make it easy for me to know where I was in that. It just kept going and going.
Yeah.
And just road signs of saying, this is 10 questions. Yes. Or 10 pages of questions, with each page having 10 questions, whatever it was.
Right.
I'm making it up. But there were like 2 or 3 pages where it was like 25 questions and they were all long answers. Yeah. And there were times where I just looked at it and I didn't know that the answers were being saved. So I thought I was just kind of strapped to the desk until I dug everything out.
Right.
And what I thought was going to be a quick and dirty, just give some background on who I am, ended up being like I don't know, who knows? It may have been like half an hour to get all that information pulled together. It was super frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Because
you slacking me. So with private clients, we usually have a Slack channel. And John slacked me and said, my heart felt for you. I was so upset with us because of the way what you said. I was like, that would irk me as well. You said, how do I know how much of this do I have left? I'm at whatever section. And I was like, I mean, I'm not intimate anymore with that form. And so I went to the person who is like, knows that form. And I was like, how far in this is he? How much does he have left? And she responded, there's like 9 sections or whatever. And so I spoke to you and then you said, yes, but I need goalposts to know where I am along the way. I want to throw my computer out the window.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And so the questions were all good. My guess is that you just started with roughly 9 pages of questions. And then the 1 page or the 2 pages that just had all the questions, it was a slow accretion of extra questions. Like, oh, this is a good question. This fits on page 7. Oh, here's another good question. Let's ask him that. And it wasn't, why would you go back through that questionnaire necessarily? You had it dialed in once, but coming back to it.
Yeah.
And so was it easy to deliver and work for you? Sure, that was great. And you as the owner, it was great to know that was done easily. You don't have to have Kristen get on the phone and talk me through all of those questions. You don't have to do that.
Right.
But if I'm, as the client doing the work, it's like, oh my God, I have no idea what all I needed to have ready, and knowing where I was and just getting lost in the process.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
So,
we have our team retreat coming up. I'm going to make sure this stuff is dialed in.
Yeah. And then on the other side, where things are good, you're always responsive. Staff is responsive. I like the experience of getting the accountability and getting the coaching. They're weekly emails, so I know what to expect each week and what I should be doing. And while I took a self-imposed break for the last few weeks, Kristen was still emailing me, and that's the way it should be. Like, oh, here's what I need to be doing. The things that you want me doing every week, I'm still doing them. Mm-hmm. And even on the weeks where I'm not coming in, it's still getting done. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's so it's not I don't want to give you like across the board, 2 stars, boo. That's not it.
Right.
It's like you said, it's stop you starting places.
Yes.
And just realizing that every time you think you've nailed something down, something else is going to pop up. And so you'll run over and do that. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. I wonder, I am assuming other people do feel the same way I feel about this. It makes me just want to come out of my skin when I hear, though, like the little things that are stop-starty. They're so like, why are they that way? Like, how did it happen? Like today, right before we got on this call, for some reason, I don't know why, and I'm going to have to look into it. The Zoom link for this call wasn't in the calendar event. What?
Yeah. I mean, it's just little things.
Experience, of course, is like, hey, I don't have a link. And I'm like, what? Like that makes things stop-starty that isn't a client interaction, but it doesn't matter to me. Whoever I'm interacting with, I want it to be smooth. And so it's just like those little things. And from an owner's perspective, I think it's really hard for team members to understand why it's so important. And I don't even think I'm that great at articulating it. I could be if I wanted to be. You are much better at articulating why it's so important. But all I know is when those little things come in, it is all I can do to take a breath and stay calm and use it as a teachable moment instead of like, why in the F did this not happen?
Right. Well, the bad news is nobody's ever going to be as perfect and wonderful as the way we would do it on our best day.
Right.
And accepting that, oh my God, like mistakes are always going to happen as much as you want them to know how to have done it as perfect and wonderfully as you are. And because podcast is an audio medium, people can't see that I'm kind of rolling my eyes and would otherwise be doing air quotes. Like, I'm not perfect, but getting, transferring the things that I know down to the folks who work for me so that they can do an 80% job. So I'm just coming in and tweaking on the end instead of, I don't need to think about how to file e-file documents anymore. Like that, somebody else does that. And I should just be able to say, please get this filed. Or, more importantly, when it comes back in, they should know to file it. Or, kind of further step back, they know that we need to get this document. That document has to be filed, which means they need to follow up with the client and on so that it's being done without me as the employee in the business. But as the owner, I can look at it and say, okay, great. The machine is turning. The conveyor belt is running.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I should just say my team members are fantastic. So what I was just saying, like, it's everything to take a breath. That's nothing to do with them. And it's everything to do with me. They're really great. So I don't want to give that off, but I think every owner could probably identify with, like, you want things done well and you want them done right. And you can't expect your expectations to just appear in their brain. You have to do it well. And this is why I know you agree, systems and processes are so important, because just because I tell a team member, hey, this is important forever, always going forward, they have to remember, or they have to, like, I expect that their brain's going to work like mine in that realm from then on. It's probably not going to happen. So there just has to be processes put into place. If you have expectations of your team, it's just got to be more automated so that they don't have to think in order to do well.
Exactly. Right. It's taking the decisions out of their hand, or at least in giving them some sort of decision tree. I fiddle around in Excel a lot. And so I know how, like, I have certain financial reports that we do in-house and not by my CPA, but I've got somebody who runs numbers every week for me. And I've just automated through an Excel coding plus text expander gives him like 95% of the decision tree.
Yeah.
So that he can look and see, all right, well, here are all 60 of our current clients in various states. He can look and get it down to, here are the clients we need to go get more money from. Mm-hmm. And here are most of them we don't need to bother with. Like, these are the ones that need money. And so having that so that we can follow up And then I can say, all right, well, Bill, now that you've got the list, the next step is before you go reach out to clients on this, still check in with me, but you know how to reach out to them so that it's in accordance with how we're taking care of people. That sort of level of this is what we're doing and this is how we do it. And, some of that stuff I can't take away from them, but I can certainly, I can replicate most of me making the decision for them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would love to hear, like, as you think deeply through customer service, where are you at with things? Are you at the point where you're delighting, so to speak, or like focusing on the service aspect, or are you still really honed in on getting the conveyor belt extremely smooth?
I've been like I've had my firm for 2.5 years. I've been going through different, stages. Like initially it was just me. And so there was the sink or swim. I had to figure out how to do this by myself because I didn't have anybody working for me. Then things were going well enough. I had the conveyor belt at a point where, if I can just get somebody else in there, I can do more things. And you grow, so that got me to like where I had 2 people working for me. And that worked for a while. But then, I'm at the point that I've got 7 people and the wheels started falling off again. And it was somewhat predictable. It probably would have happened at a higher number of actual employees 10 years ago, only because I've been able to outsource. Like, Smith answers my phone and that's great. So that's one employee I don't have to have. And things like that. It got to the point where I could do things and I could keep things running by just having me work harder. But in the last, at the beginning of the summer in 2020, it really got to the point where it's like, I can't work any more than I already am. And it's not that I don't like what I do. It's just, there's never going to be enough me to cover all of this. So my job became less about doing all of it. I've got to get my people to the point that they can do things for me so that I'm not focused on, I don't have time to do basic client intake. Like my practice area really does benefit from me being the initial phone call with clients, but a lot of things can be done in like tracking clients, seeing where they are. I have Brad on my team takes care of that so that, we're having a 15-minute meeting once a week just to go over, here are the people we have to talk to this week. What do we need to do? Call him, don't call him, text him in a week, leave him alone.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely seems like you have hit a stride with your team this last 2 months, listening to you talk about how you think about delegating and how you approach working with them. And it seems like you've really hit a stride.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been great. And it's all, I couldn't have done it, it was supplemented by the fact that I know what I'm doing practice-wise, that I could get things dialed in so that I could focus more on getting the business back on track, like rebuilding, expanding the conveyor belt. And it has been, I think so we're mid-November, starting in mid-September, I noticed there was a lot smoother revenue coming in because I started, like you told me, do weekly transfers, not monthly or whenever I get around to it. Having somebody whose job just is do the books weekly. And it took him a while to get there. But once that happened, I really found, this is what it kind of looks like week to week. And once I know what it should look like week to week, I could then back into, well, this is what needs to come out every week. And if I can do that, then I can target, all right, well, I don't get to stop. The wheels come off on the firm if we don't have this much money, both coming in as new retainers, as well as money coming out of the retainer into our income bucket. And there was no way I was going to have any of that ability to even put those things together until I'd been working in this long enough to know what that conveyor belt even looked like. And now it's like, the conveyor belt is powered by new clients and new money. And the only way it keeps turning is, we need to know what that looks like, and just getting more dug in on what those numbers are and what I need to do every week. Like, oh, well, now that we know that, great. And it makes it so much easier, because in some ways it's really, it's kind of crass to say, oh, well, each week I need to get X thousands of dollars in as new clients and out as produced work. It broke it down in a way that it was so much easier. It's like, oh, well, that means, I need to have this many new client meetings. I need to have this many sign at, they're all the different permutations of, maybe it's one new estate administration plus 2 new client meetings as new clients. And then the work that goes out, we need to get 1 signing, 1 initial recommendation, and 3 sets of drafts out. And that'll get us to our goal. And just even knowing that, it takes the stress level down, because it's not, I need thousands of dollars in every week. It's, oh, I can kind of pick and choose from the list of things, and we can just go get that money, kind of prioritize and triage down to what we can do, and plan out. All right, well, I know one of these weeks I'm going to have an extra easy week. Maybe it'll be Thanksgiving, but I'm waiting for the state of Texas Secretary of State to file some documents for a client. And the moment, I get paid a third of one of my weeks when that happens, that was the trigger for the client of, whenever the Secretary of State has filed that paperwork and we get back, we get paid.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I will say, I know this is that your jam outside of practicing law is customer service, but if I can give a compliment, working with you is fascinating, because everybody in their heads loves the idea of working off of numbers and not hunches, right? But your business has grown pretty quickly before I met you, pretty quickly. And you were in that, just like you were talking about earlier, it's the beginning of the summer when I met you. In the beginning of the summer 2020 is when you were like, I need to focus. I have to figure this out, because the wheels are starting to come off. And through our conversations and the work that we've done so far together, all I have to do, and this isn't my plan, this is just what happens. All I have to do is mention something in your brain, like around a number, or like maybe there could be clarity around this or something, and your brain runs with it. Your brain will go dig harder, faster, and come up with a solution based on facts and not feelings faster than anyone else I've ever worked with. It's pretty cool to watch.
And to tie it back to my ultimate, underlying service model, like, the reason you're here is not like the progress I'm making I would have stumbled into it one way or another, but you're the kind of accountability and guide and helping me make sure I'm not running down wasteful avenues, because you've seen, you work with enough lawyers, you've done enough consulting and business building that you can help on that side and stop me from shiny object syndrome. And that's that's literally the important part of what you're doing. And it's you as the outside coach aren't here to come in and turn the cranks or, turn the wrench on any of this. Like, you're not doing that. Your job is to help me get my right answer and guide me to that and hold my feet to the fire when I don't.
Right.
And that's it. That's fine. If I needed somebody to come in and do it, that's a different person. And that's okay too. Yeah. I've got an outside consultant I work with who just does Airtable and Zapier stuff. And we're working with him to automate a bunch of the internal bookkeeping stuff. So it's just copy and paste from CSVs and not 2 hours of retyping things. And then it's going to generate all these other numbers, it'll generate payroll because we'll know what has happened. Right. And it takes just take some of the boring human repetitive part out of it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, totally. Do you, what would you say over the last few months? Because we've done a lot of work and there's a lot of conversation that we've had, and we haven't even had your retreat yet. That's coming up. Yep. But before this, so far, what would you say is the best or most notable result so far? Because there's a lot of work. There's a lot of like numbers and stuff all over the place. But what would you say result wise?
Ooh, that's tough because there have been some really good ones. I mean, I've just getting the delegation down has been really important for me, and seeing, oh, no, I can't do this. I need to get every day. One of my tasks is get something off my desk. Mm-hmm. But also drilling down on where the revenue comes from. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, we just last week went through and updated all of our matter, since inception, all 300 plus matters, went through and recoded all of them to make sure that they were the right type of matter. So that we can say, oh, okay, well, we've had exactly this many. So for probate, we've got 4 different types, because there are 3 that we see all the time, and then the other category, which we'll keep around until it's time to, divide off another one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for estate planning, I think we've got 10 different versions of it. Mm-hmm. Married or single, and then what level of plan. And then I've just even been flirting with adding more levels for different estate tax, DEFCON levels for estate tax, like from 0 where we don't have to worry about anything to, level 2 where it's minor tweaking until the law changes, to, DEFCON 1 is the worst version, with people like two people with separate keys standing on opposite sides of the computer terminal. I confirm this is an order. Level of planning, like, oh, we have to do all the things right now because you've got a massive tax bill coming. So the idea is just
for people listening. I just want them to. I don't know if they have enough context. He has like this internal rating system. That's what he's explaining right now. That right. It's fascinating, and so makes it so clear on where your attention needs to fly quickly.
Right.
So anyway, keep going.
All right. And so the client, it makes it better because then, having done this enough, I know what clients need, and I can contextualize it. So the system, we're still tweaking with it, but the idea is, whether you're in your mid 40s and you're adding assets at a good clip, or in your 70s and you're looking at retirement, we can still figure out how much work you need for estate tax. And when we can say to the clients, all right, you're level 3, instead of just saying you need some tax planning, it makes it so much easier for them to comprehend. But it's easier for me to say, look, you're not just Cadillac plan, but you're Cadillac, low tier Cadillac instead of entry level Ford. And it buys me a lot of respect from clients when I can say, oh yeah, I'll say that explicitly to clients. Like, we've got 3-tier pricing, and I'll say, I tell clients all the time, like, you don't need the mid-level or even the top level. It's, you can have that. I will take your money for it, but you're not going to get the same result. And the other side of it is, I'm not charging, like, I would happily sell the low tier all day long because we're still profitable at that. And that's the point. I don't have lost leaders because I don't have that level of business where that would work. If we're going to do work for clients, we need to be profitable at it.
Yes, totally.
And it helps guide when we increase prices or increase or decrease prices, just knowing, okay, it's not just a gut feeling. This is the work that's involved with it, and we can differentiate what comes in or out. Because if somebody gives a pushback on price, it's like, all right, well, you wanted these things, and that's what comes in this tier. And it's, there was initial, we had problems initially with it because we didn't know what went where. But now that we've been doing this for over a year, we have so much experience with it we can look at it and say, this is the next level. And actually, the thing that was mid-tier and above, I'm happy to start offering that at the low tier just as a free bonus to not, it doesn't undermine the price. It just sets me apart from other firms that I know aren't going to do things like that for their basic level clients.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting that, the way that you present to them, the tiers, but also maybe even more so the internal rating system you have for matters and attention deserving level. I don't know. What do you call that scale?
Oh, I haven't, we don't even have a name for it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's 1 to 5, right?
So that's the estate tax side of it. There's the kind of estate mess score. Like how much of a mess will your estate create? I think that's more specific.
That is different.
That is different, but they all ultimately, clients could have, because the estate tax problem figures into and feeds the mess score.
Yes.
Because if your clients, it's one thing for clients to know that they're going to have an estate tax bill, and some of them are just knowingly taking a risk. Like my job is not to get their bill to zero. It's to help them manage what that bill is going to be.
Yeah.
Because some clients are, I've got one client who is in her mid 40s, if she died today, would have an estate tax problem, but she's in her mid 40s and she has 5 kids who are going to go to college.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that money that's going to get spent on, 20 years of college.
Right.
Even though she's still adding assets, like she's not comfortable. She's more comfortable taking the risk that she's going to live for 20 years and we can manage it over that time, instead of saying my bill needs to be zero if I die tomorrow, because the likelihood is she won't.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. Actually, I haven't seen that news. I know what you're talking about. Okay. So here's the thing. This should tell you something. We talked about customer service, and I feel like this is good. It's coming back full circle, because what I originally was talking about was you have an internal rating system for the active matters that are in practice. And that system is 1 to 5.
Oh, yes. So that's kind of managing workflow. So all of these number things, I love dealing with numbers,
yes, but the beauty is, I guess it doesn't really, it doesn't necessarily really matter for the listeners, because they're never going to be able in this short time frame be able to take that idea and run with it. The whole point is you have an internal measuring system, scoring system for matters in terms of workflow, what needs attention now, whatever. Then you just created over the last couple months a scoring system for clients so that they can basically take a quiz and learn what they'll need, or how big of a mess they are, or something.
Right. Where is there, which of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse will visit them, or is it all 4 of them? And
okay, so there's that.
And just knowing that, is the risk other people, or is it a tax bill, helping them quantify what their mess could look like.
Hilarious. So, okay. But the whole point that I was trying to make, that I'm doing a very poor job of doing very quick, is that this goes back to customer service. This helps you deliver a very smooth product.
Right.
And so it's like even the little things behind the scenes that you set up. I just want everybody to be thinking about this. And I really do think everybody should listen to you have a podcast that is focused on customer service for law firm owners. So you go, I'm sure, into a lot more detail there, but I really think that you are such a strong example of not just having the knowledge and the expertise around customer service because of your years managing at the Four Seasons, but also you do a very good job of putting things into practice and creating systems and protocols and processes that make sure that your conveyor belt is smooth as possible. And I know it's about progress, not perfection, but you've made quite a bit of progress. You're pretty cool.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing, the service aspect, it's how the business does it. and it helps generate the experience that the client has. And so
Yeah.
client service and experience are inextricably linked, but they're two different things. The service is what the business does, even if the client doesn't see it. So the scoring, we'll tell clients what their numbers are, but they don't, know or care how we got there, as long as we, if we can help them see, oh, I've got this problem. This is bad, or this is not so bad, then we can focus on fixing the right problems, not just saying, oh, well, let's tweak on estate tax. Well, if they don't have a big tax problem, that's not what they need to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so great. Thanks for coming on. Now I'm going to talk to you about hiring you for us. Okay. So 5-Star Counsel is your podcast.
Yes. 5-Star Counsel. We just launched the podcast. If you are interested in hearing me talk about more client service things, as well as interview fun, smart people, including you, we've eventually, your episode is in the queue to get edited. If you're interested in more of it, go find 5-Star Counsel podcast wherever wherever fine podcasts are found. Start with episode 1.
Yeah,
that will be me laying out in finer detail my theory of service, because we've been going back and forth on this, and this is still useful. But episode 1 of 5-Star Counsel podcast, start with that. It'll tell you what I'm thinking about, how I've framed up all of this. Then go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Is it the number 5-Star Counsel?
FIVE.
Okay, spelled out. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. With John Strohmeyer.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course. No, this was a lot of fun. Thanks, Melissa.
It was. Okay. Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.